Hey, put your hands up if you want to talk about Fire Emblem.
Nobody!
Woo, baby! Notice that my hands didn't go up. Hi guys, welcome back to another pretty apathetic episode of Smashtalk. I'm here with Pizza Dude Man Guy.
Hey!
And I would just like to remind you all, once again, to get in that Discord. If you want to join the conversation outside of here, you can also talk down in the comments. But it's more real time on Discord, and you get to see weird pictures of me in costumes from auditions that I'm going on. You can find a permanent link to mine on the page, and if you want if you want to go to Pizzas, just leave a comment saying so, and he'll send you a link. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about Fire Emblem.
Chris and I have very different feelings about Fire Emblem.
We have an incredibly different relationship with both the game series and just the existence of the series in Smash as well.
So, but also the good thing about that is that between the two of us, we have love for the whole series.
Yes.
I love Awakening and Fates, and Chris loves everything before Awakening and Fates.
I mean, it's not entirely true.
I know.
Like, Roy's game was alright. Gaiden wasn't very good. It had some cool ideas, but it wasn't well balanced. But the remake was better. Yeah, I have an appreciation for the history of the series. He likes anime.
I'll just be honest. Fire Emblem just was one of those series that didn't interest me. Just by looking at it, it didn't hook me, and so I never really got into it because growing up, you have to prioritize with your money what games you're gonna buy, and so I just didn't prioritize Fire Emblem. So what wound up being my real first experience with it, and I mean, there were some things I played, like a little bit of the original GBA game. By original, I mean the first one released internationally, and I saw some Radiant Dawn, but my real true first personal experience with the game was in college when I saw Taylor playing Fire Emblem Awakening. And I was like, hey, that looks cool. I'm going to try that. And then I loved it. And so I bought my own copy, and I just played the hell out of it.
He's put in literally thousands of hours.
Right now, on my DS, I'm logged at about 2,400 hours for Awakening and 2,900 hours for Fates.
So this guy has put in over 5,000 hours on the new Fire Emblem games. Just those two.
Just those two. Because I liked them so much, I would play them over and over and over again to try to get all the different combinations of support conversations you can do.
So Fire Emblem changed drastically as a series. I'm sure everybody knows about it. I did a video about the change on Awakening a while back. Just kind of going over why it split people so much. And yeah, I was a fan of strategy games, which is why it didn't sell well. Was strategy games are a very niche thing that it's hard to get it to appeal to a mass market. Just in general,
that is true.
A lot of people are bored with it. It's just generally the way it goes. They're very dry compared to a lot of other gaming experiences. But I found, as somebody who likes strategy games, I found them to be very compelling. I got the original one that came over to America. I got that because of Melee. And then from there, just kept playing the series. And then when they stopped making games, for a while, I was just like, I need something to do. So I played all the Japanese-only ones. And somebody from Minnesota is calling me. Why? Right, so I really appreciated these. I played all the Japanese ones, and I loved the series. I got really excited for Awakening. Awakening came out, I started playing it, I was just like, oh, this is just not scratching that itch anymore. It's not the anime that
No, I know that you're just joking about that.
I'm fine. There are several anime games that I play and love. Even though I'm not a huge fan of anime itself. The art style does not turn me off. It was the difference in gameplay systems. My general feeling towards the way that Fire Emblem has been treated in Smash is that they're just doing a really bad job of representing it.
I kind of want to just start by going over the history of that, just the choices in Smash Brothers. Most of us, I think, had never even heard of Fire Emblem until Melee. There were some people
Yeah.
who were like, oh yeah, I heard of it, because I'm really into the Japanese games. But the majority was like, oh, I just didn't even know this was a thing that existed. And the idea of it coming got really popular because Marth and Roy became just such popular characters in Smash Bros. Melee. Now, as far as that goes, Marth is the main lord of the original Fire Emblem game, as well as the third Fire Emblem game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes. The second game was technically a side story that takes place during Marth's...
During the same time.
Yeah, it's the same world, but
as the
not the
first
same
one, but
characters, not the same...
Different continent, right?
Yeah. And then the next game after that was a game that included the first game, and then also, like, a continuation of it as a second game.
So yeah, Marth makes sense as like, oh, we're going to add a Fire Emblem character. We're going to add the Fire Emblem character. We're going to add Marth. And in addition to Marth, I think what happened was, as far as the story goes, is that, Sakurai was looking for ways to push the character number up to 25, which resulted in the creation of the clone characters, like Dr. Mario, like Pichu. And I think one idea was just that, hey, maybe I could... take Marth's moveset and apply it to another Fire Emblem character. So I think the creators of Fire Emblem, which I'm pretty sure is Intelligent Systems.
Yes, it's Intelligent.
Pushed for including the character from their upcoming game as a promotional thing. As like, hey, we're making this new Fire Emblem game. It stars this lord named Roy, and his sword has fire. So you could just make Marth have fire, and that would be a new character. And I don't know if Sakurai was convinced. From what I've heard, he was much more interested in having Leaf as a second Fire Emblem character.
Yeah.
Who wasn't he the main character of the fifth Fire Emblem game?
Yeah, Genealogy of the Holy War kind of has
Was
two main
fourth.
characters. Because there's a time skip in the middle of the game, and you play as the kids of the people that you played as in the first part of it.
And that's the fourth Fire Emblem game, is Genealogy.
Yes, and then
the fifth one
and then
is
Thracia
Tharja.
776. Yeah.
Yes, which that's the one where you play as Leaf. So
It's
I want to say that...
It's a side story.
Right. And I think that was the latest one that had actually been released by the time Melee came out. It was that then they had the sixth one with Roy on its way. So, with after a little bit of back and forth, they agreed to put in Roy, which a lot of people who know Fire Emblem kind of look back on strangely, because I guess compared to other Fire Emblem games, I never hear many good things about Roy's game about Roy himself.
Roy's game was one of the most mediocre, and Roy was one of the least interesting protagonists.
And yet people love him in Smash Brothers because they remember how fondly they used him in Melee with fire.
Yeah, he's more of a Smash character than a Fire Emblem character at this point.
Just like Captain Falcon.
Pretty much.
Captain Falcon's not a Fire Emblem character at all. In any case.
I mean, when he punches, there's a fire representation of his emblem.
And he was able to defeat Lucina in a trailer.
Yes. Why was that who they paired up? Whatever.
I don't know. Okay, so let's keep going then. We have Brawl. So they're like, hey, we should add a new Fire Emblem character because it's a new game. And so who'd they go with? They go with Ike, who is the lord in the newest series. So of course they skip over,
Sacred Stones.
Fire. They decide not just Sacred Stones, but also the one with Eliwood, Hector, and Lynn.
Yeah, Binding Blade. They skipped over Binding Blade and Sacred Stones.
They skip over those two games and go with Ike. Maybe because he was the most recent lord. Maybe because it was the first time in a while they had a console Fire Emblem game, and that was kind of a big deal. And maybe because Ike himself was a pretty well-liked character. He was very different from the previous lords because he wasn't even a lord at all.
Yeah,
he was a mercenary.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
All those things factor in, I think.
Yeah, he had a different background than virtually every other protagonist. He was big in the West, which was exciting for Fire Emblem to actually have a game that was doing really well in the West. He was popular, and it was also relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, he went on to he had 2 games, you know.
Oh yeah, and then Radiant Dawn didn't come out until I think a little bit into Brawl or during Brawl's development. I think it was during Brawl's development that Radiant Dawn came out.
Either way, they knew it was happening.
Yes. And so, yeah, no, Ike makes perfect sense between all those factors. Now, what did happen is because Roy was lower priority, probably just because he was a clone, he was cut. And so you started seeing this thing. It's like, oh, they have Marth, the traditional character, plus Roy, the newest. Marth, the traditional character, plus Ike, the newest. So a lot of people kind of just expected that was going to be the continuing pattern going into Smash 4. So in Smash 4, I know a lot of people, myself included, anticipated, okay, they're going to have Marth for sure, and they're definitely going to add Chrom, because Fire Emblem Awakening is the newest thing, it's doing really well, and Chrom's the main lord, so he's the next kind of follow-up to Roy and Ike. And maybe they'll return Ike, and maybe they won't. Well, they did wind up returning Ike, but we didn't get Chrom. Instead, they added Robin. And I think the thinking there was simply that we've seen Marth, Roy, and Ike, who are all quote-unquote main lords with swords. And that's pretty normal in Fire Emblem, is the main lord wields a magic sword, or a special sword of some sort. Whereas Robin, even though he's not the main lord, he and Chrom kind of share that main protagonist slot, and Robin's primarily a spellcaster, so they probably saw in that a good excuse to add a popular Fire Emblem main character spellcaster. It was a stars aligning moment there.
Yeah, and it also is the character that the player itself designs, which is also a thing, I think.
We've got Marth, Ike, and Robin. That's a pretty cool lineup. Well, here's what happens next. Some characters, because of extra time and development, become what we now call echoes. It's like, hey, we've got these characters that are just alternate costumes, like Alf is to Olimar, but we have time to actually change their stats and give them some unique animations and make them characters, but not enough time to make a full unique newcomer. So let's do that. And one of the results of that was Lucina as an echo to Marth. So on the surface, that makes sense. What it meant, though, was that now, between Marth, Lucina, and Ike, we have 3 Fire Emblem main lord swordsmen, plus Robin as a spellcaster, who still also has a sword.
Yeah.
Then, by popular demand, because he was such a well-liked melee character, Roy came back. Now we have Marth, Lucina, and Roy, who are not only main Fire Emblem lords with swords, they also all used approximately the same moveset in Smash Brothers. Plus Ike, who's different, but also uses a sword and one similar special move. And then Robin. And so once that happened, people are like, okay, that is plenty. You have 5 Fire Emblem characters. That's more than most other series on this roster have. You know, sans Mario and Pokemon, which are the 2 biggest Nintendo series there are, but you're starting to surpass Zelda characters with Fire Emblem. Well, then they added Corrin. People were pissed when they added Corrin. First of all, when they added Corrin, that was, to be fair, about a year after the game had been released in Japan. But at that point, the game still hadn't even come to the West. So people saw it as another Roy. I was like, oh, this is just a promotional character. Well, they said, not technically true, because the game Fates had already been out in Japan for a year. But on the other hand, it's like, gee, we're going to add a few select DLC characters to Smash Brothers. Let's add a 6th Fire Emblem character who is a main lord with a sword. Now, the thing that is different about Corrin, which is what I think they were going for, is that besides wielding a sword, Corrin's main set of abilities is turning into a dragon, and that is another big thing in Fire Emblem. Is throughout the series, especially the original games, you have dragon companions, people who turn into dragons. And so I think they saw that kind of like with Robin as an opportunity to add a main spellcaster. I think they saw Corrin as a good opportunity to add a main Dragonoid character. And from that standpoint, I like that idea in theory. The problem was people were already starting to get fed up with the number of Fire Emblem characters in Smash Brothers. And so when they saw that, they were just like, okay, what is going on? One thing I would say is that for now, for like Smash, what some people call this Smash 5, Smash 6, for this Smash game, for Smash Ultimate, I would think that like Corrin would be a prime contender as a newcomer, except for the fact he was already added.
Yeah. I mean,
so that's the reasoning about why and how that all went down, and it is a little bit of a mess, all coincidental, all circumstantial, and honestly, I like the Fire Emblem characters we have for the different reasons they were added, but when you put them all together like that, it's not difficult to see why people don't like it.
My main thing is that there is so much in this series regarding fighting styles and weapons and plot elements. Like, we don't need the protagonist of every game. Like, we can get a villain that has a more interesting fighting style. We can get a major supporting character. There's so many things we can do that would let us like showcase other things that are in the game, other than just like the Lords of Swords, who are usually one of the less popular and more boring characters.
Yes, that is true. Usually it's the side characters that are the more interesting story-wise, character-wise, fighting-wise.
Yeah, because they actually get to, like, have development instead of just having to be like I'm doing this for my country. It doesn't feel like I'm seeing Fire Emblem when I look at that roster. It feels like... I don't even know. I don't know.
No.
We could have an archer... We could have some kind of mounted character. We could have anything. We could have so many things.
It's hard because what I feel like they want to do is they want to represent the series, and so they go, oh, well, these are the main characters from different games spanning throughout the series. The problem is so many of the main characters use the same type of weapon.
Yeah. Fire Emblem is a series that runs majorly off of tropes. A lot of the games repeat elements. That's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
That's like way back before Awakening even got announced. Well, not way before. I mean, like literally a day before Awakening got announced. I made a speculation video about Smash 4 talking about Fire Emblem, and I was like, well, if we're going to get a new character, we're going to have to go into the past because that's all there is. They're like done making games, it looks like. And so one of the things we went back to was Hardin, because he was one of the characters that established an archetype that is repeated over and over throughout Fire Emblem. He is the, like, good, noble, like, knight that gets corrupted, basically.
Yeah.
And that's been repeated so many times. And he's from the original games. He's from Marth's games. And in the first one, he's your ally. And in the second, he becomes corrupted. And he becomes, like, somebody you have to fight. And, it would be a thing of, like, is this heavily armored guy that would use weapons that we haven't seen yet.
Right, his main thing was a lance.
Yeah. And knights in general, or generals in general, I should say, they tend to use lances and axes, which we don't have a lot of,
And none for Fire Emblem in Smash.
Yeah.
But that was the thing, is, like, it's tough because, like, yeah, you do want to go and you want to add, like, okay, what does Fire Emblem have? It has swords, lances, axes, bows, magic, and some of the newer and even older
Pegasus
stuff, hidden weapons. And so, wouldn't it be cool to have a representative character of each of those things versus what we actually have, which is main lord from like 4 or 5 different games.
And the thing is, because the series runs off of tropes, that's why all these lords are so similar.
They're all tropes of each other.
Yeah,
they're all
the
sword-wielding hero.
They tend to have similar personalities, even similar designs, similar weapons. It's just like...
there's so many tropes that aren't being represented. You don't have, the evil sorcerer. You don't have the Red Knight and Green Knight. You don't have the Jagan. You don't have...
you don't have the paladin that's always like by your side.
The young healer. The noble paladin. The wind casting young mage. These are all Fire Emblem tropes.
Yeah, and there's just none of it. I think it would be really cool too to like see if it's possible to work in like a thief character. See if it's possible to work in one of the healers. Like there's so many things you can do that would be so cool from a gameplay standpoint. But it feels like they're prioritizing like main characters and like, oh, we got to get the main characters in, and it's like the main characters are some of the least appealing things in the series.
And I know it was the same for me as it was for you, I think. Before Fire Emblem Awakening ever came into existence, I was starting to, like, when I was doing Smash Speculation and doing fake rosters back then, I was having those types of characters. Like, I think my thing
You were big on Micaiah.
Yeah, that was my thing. It was like, okay, we have Marth and we have Ike, who are there because they're there. And then, well, since we haven't seen a new Fire Emblem game, and we have seen Radiant Dawn, why don't we build off of that cast? So yeah, we have Ike as our main lord and swordsman. We could have Micaiah, who's like actually the main character of Radiant Dawn, even though Ike kind of still is. And Micaiah could be a spellcaster character. And then if we wanted to take it even further, we could have Soth, who's a rogue, and is also a main character of those games.
Yeah, and the thing is, with these characters so like with Micaiah and Soth, like it's really cool that we finally had like main characters that weren't
swords.
That weren't like, sword lords. But then because of the style of the games, you don't really get a lot in the way of recurring characters. So then their games pass.
You just don't. That's going to happen no matter what with a series like Fire Emblem.
Although now that's starting to happen, but the way that it's starting to happen is in a thing of like, oh, we're just going to bring everybody back. All the main characters and fan popular characters. And so now it's like this weird amalgamation of like all the lords from the past games, and then now like the fan favorite characters, which generally just tend to be which anime girls they want to fuck the most. So it's like
not always.
Quite a bit of it. quite a bit of it is like oh man, the obsession I see over like characters like summer costumes and stuff. I just look at it and I'm like, how has this happened to Fire Emblem? How is this where it's gone? Like, it's just like a weird thing of like, I just don't know what to think when I look at it anymore.
Right.
I don't know what to even say. So people say things like, oh, they want Tharja, and I'm like, I guess maybe. I don't know. Like, what would... She doesn't really have a lot of importance.
Okay.
It was just that people thought she was hot. That's it.
Right.
That's her thing, which is like, is that acceptable? Is that what we go for? Like, I don't know. What is important at this point?
Boy, yeah, because I don't really even know how to shift into the next topic. What characters could we see out of Fire Emblem in Smash Brothers in the future? Where we are now. Where we are now is we have Marth, Roy, Lucina, Ike, Robin, and Corrin. So where do we go from here?
And when you look at those characters, like, I think Marth, I don't think has any chance of getting cut.
Right.
Ike, I also think none of them are going to get cut, obviously. But
no,
I mean, like,
of course,
in the
already
future,
there.
If they were going to cut, like, Marth and Ike, I feel are important enough and unique enough that it's fine. Lucina is very popular.
Yeah,
so
she's
cool.
become such an icon of the newer games.
But when I look at Roy and Corrin, Roy especially, Roy in the actual Fire Emblem series is just nothing.
I agree.
People wanted him back because he was in Melee.
Because of Melee.
And that was really it. And
that's
to their credit, they did make him more unique, and so that's nice. We don't have like just 3 Marths now. We have 2 Marths and a kind of Marth.
Yeah.
So that's good. Like,
it kind of mirrors Mario, Luigi, and Dr. Mario.
Yeah. Even more so. I mean, Mario still doesn't have a clone that's as similar as Lucina is to Marth.
No.
So we've got that, and then like Corrin, it's like I don't. What sucks is like, yeah, he's unique, which is nice, but it's also like I don't know, and I guess Robin as well. It's like they're both unique, but like I don't know that they're going to continue to have importance.
It's really hard to tell.
And I wouldn't say that they're particularly popular either, compared to... Because, Robin's a self-insert, so it's like hard to even really think of it as a character as much. And then Corrin, I haven't really seen people like be too excited about Corrin.
I will say, it's undeniable that people don't clamor over Corrin as they do with Robin. They give Robin enough of his or her own, personality and story within Awakening that it isn't... even though it's an insert yourself character,
it isn't
okay,
entirely
it's an insert your character, but then you discover, the backstory and the connection it has to the world that it's in, and it feels like it's enough of its own thing. I get why people really like Robin. Corrin is just... The way they write Corrin's dialogue, especially in support conversations, Corrin is just so agreeable about everything. It makes Corrin come across as someone with no personality because they just talk to someone, find out about them, and go, "Oh, that's an interesting thing you do. I'm gonna discover more about you."
That's kind of just like what the Lords are like, except for Ike. But Corrin does. It has seemed like Corrin is to a greater extent than the others, but for the most part, the Lords are always just super inoffensive, wise, noble people.
Yeah.
And so it's
it's tough. It's tough balancing out fates because the problem is that you just have so many characters. Basically, you have 2 entire armies of characters interacting, and so it gets really messy trying to do any kind of interaction.
When I look at it, it's a thing of we might get, depending on how quickly development is moving and what we hear by then, we might get a character from the next Fire Emblem as a promotional thing.
As a DLC. And we can talk about that. There's a lot of things to talk about. I guess we can start with that as long as we're there. I mean, given what we've seen with Corrin, a lot of people believe that that's going to happen. Is that, we're going to get a DLC character based on Fire Emblem Three Houses, and I would not be surprised by that whatsoever.
Yeah. And then, as far as stuff outside of that, I wouldn't be surprised if Tharja showed up.
Really? I mean, it's still hard to tell.
If we're going off of popularity,
If we're going off to popularity, we got Camilla, too.
I feel like Tharja has more popularity, though.
Than Camilla?
In that her game is further away and still,
I see what you're saying. Okay.
She's being talked about and treated with the importance of characters who are much more important than her. She's not important. She doesn't matter. She has no story importance at all. Camilla does.
The big thing with Tharja is it is actually one of the few characters that it directly ties to Robin. Because most characters, see Robin as Chrom's partner in stuff for the kingdom, but they still treat Chrom as the commander. Mm-hmm. Whereas Tharja is I think the only character besides Chrom and maybe Lissa that see Robin as more.
I guess, but that's a thing that I don't think would be taken into consideration.
Maybe not, but I think it is one of the reasons people remember Tharja more. It's more than just that she's hot. It's that she's obsessed with your self-insert character that is what makes her memorable.
I feel like that kind of also just feeds into that fetishization, though.
Could be.
I think because the personality is also a part of it, and
oh yeah,
oh god, it's so weird to get into this. How is this what the series has become?
Before E3, a lot of people still brought up Lyn because there's another character. You want to talk about characters that have never died off in popularity? Man, yeah, Lyn is one if I ever saw one.
Before these recent games.
I would say even bigger than Tharja, because that game's even further back, and people still talk Lyn is the best female character to have ever existed in any Fire Emblem game. Now, that aside, I don't disagree, because I do remember Lyn sticking out, and I do remember Lyn being a more memorable character and being a more likable character.
She's much more interesting than Eliwood. Out of the
I like her whole story about
out of the three main lords in Fire Emblem, Eliwood is by far the worst.
Oh god, yes.
Lyn is memorable. She's what you start off with, and she is the player's kind of connection to the game.
Well, that's the thing too. She's attached to your insert character. Not that you have like build one like you do in Awakening, but you're the strategist and she's the one connected to you.
She's the emotional through line. She has a tutorial and everything. Like she's what made that game feel a bit better than a lot of the other ones in the series, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. Like it's not that I don't understand why Lynn has persisted to be a popular character. I think it makes complete sense.
I personally prefer Hector, but like would be completely happy with Lynn. I just don't know if it's a thing that's gonna happen.
So at the very least, Lynn's not happening now because she's an assist trophy. I'm not convinced that we won't see assist trophies as DLC characters if they're popular enough, but it's not at least not going to happen base game.
So I don't know. It's weird to talk about just because it's like we're just caught between, yeah, probably just whatever new lord there is, and then also, hey, maybe if we get anything different, it'll be these characters that are really popular.
There's 2 characters, maybe even 3 characters I want to bring up in particular. The first one is Celica. So the whole thing with Celica, she is at this point technically the most recent one of the main lords we've had. It's just we've never had an opportunity before to add a character from a remake because the other remakes we'd seen by the time Smash Brothers started were all games that starred Marth, and so Marth was already there. So we really don't know how Smash Brothers is going to treat Echoes. Is it going to treat it as the newest Fire Emblem and prioritize adding its main protagonist? Now, some people will argue with me that you can't have Celica without Alm, and like I don't agree at all.
That's really stupid.
I don't agree at all. Fire Emblem Warriors had Celica without Alm. Smash Brothers 4 has Robin and Lucina without Chrom. I think it's very, very easy, especially because in Fire Emblem Echoes, you spend the bulk of the game with Alm and Celica apart. I think it makes complete sense to have Celica without Alm, and would probably be the most likely scenario.
That's the lord I would be most interested in seeing, probably, just because it is a chance to get something, like, more unique out of a lord.
Yeah.
I mean, like, having a priestess would be amazing.
Right, because she is another sword spellcaster like Robin, but the types of magic she uses is very different.
And the kind of sword is very different.
Yep, that too.
You're talking about a rapier, which is at least a different fighting style with a sword.
Oh, by far. You cannot fight with a rapier the same way the other Fire Emblem characters use their swords.
Not at all.
Because that's the thing, too. I get very tired of the too many swords argument in general. Like, I understand why people complain about with Fire Emblem specifically, because there is such a variety of weapons. But, like, fighting styles between different types of swords vary so much. There's an entire game dedicated to that called Soul Calibur. It proves that so many sword styles have different ways of using them.
And as far as, like, being a spellcaster like Robin is, he's more of, like, an arcane spellcaster, and she's kind of more of a divine spellcaster, if that makes any sense.
If you're into D&D, it's like wizard versus cleric.
Yeah, it's like wizard or cleric. It's like very different kinds of magic, so you could do wildly different stuff with it. Like, you'd be talking about using light magic and dark magic, which, like, Robin uses dark...
He uses one dark spell, Nosferatu, but light magic doesn't even exist in Awakening.
Yeah,
besides like one tome.
Oh man, if there's any lord, I would be down for that. I just don't know if that's the direction they would go.
I don't know either. I'm just saying we don't really. That's the big thing I'm saying is we don't know. I don't know if they're going to treat Echoes as a new game. We've never seen that type of thing before. I'm going to go ahead now and bring up because I know you have some feelings on this one. I'm going to bring up Chrom to you.
Why now? Like, I guess the best thing to do if he was added would be to make him an Ike Echo so that he's not another Marth, but like, god damn, you would have a series that's over half Echoes.
Yeah, I really can't argue against anything you said because it all like really makes sense.
It's not
that
over
being
half
said,
Echoes, but
that being said, I did make a video where I really went into depth why I think Chrom makes sense as an Ike Echo, and personally, I would like that because it does bother me a little bit, despite what I was saying about Celica, that like just because of the way things have worked out, we by chance, from Fire Emblem Awakening, have both Robin and Lucina as playable characters in Smash Brothers. One is the main lord's partner, one is the main lord's daughter. So we don't actually have the main lord from that game.
I don't care. Nobody cares about the lords. I don't care.
One character, I don't see her get brought up as much anymore, but I used to quite a bit because a lot of people see her as such an icon to the series, especially because she's been playable so often recently. What do you think about Anna?
I like her a lot. I know a lot of people say that she's the worst healer, but like, she's still probably who I would main. Hopefully she'll get back in the meta soon, but I don't know. It'd be tough because you have to allow her to like shoot through shields, but then that would kind of break her character. This is a really extended Overwatch joke. I'm gonna stop that. You're talking about Anna, the merchant.
Yes, of course.
I think it would be interesting. It'd be an interesting, unique character, and she's more recurring than anybody else. So
she is. That's the big point Anna has for her. And the other nice thing about Anna is that in most of her recent appearances, she's been portrayed as an archer.
Yeah. I would like it. If we get a new character, that'd be a great way to go. I just don't have faith that it's going to happen. I don't think he wants me to be happy.
And then the last thing I want to bring up, this is very presumptuous, because we don't really even know all the details of Fire Emblem Three Houses yet. But there's already lots of people, myself included, that are looking at a certain character, and that character is I want to pronounce that Edelgard, maybe Edelgard. And what we presumptuously know about Edelgard right now, based on what we've seen, we believe that she is the main lord of the main house that you play as in the game, and the partner character to your avatar. And that not only that, her primary weapon is the axe. I said, that is all based on presumptuous knowledge, because it could turn out, any of those things could wind up not being true. But that's what it looks like, and a lot of people have played up that, oh yeah, Edelgard will be the DLC Fire Emblem Smash Brothers character when the Three Houses releases. I think it's a little too early to call that, but if all those things are true, I'd be down with it.
She does swords and axes.
She does swords and axes, but they kind of play up the axe being her main thing.
She also seems to have magic as well, apparently.
Oh, really? That's new information to me, so...
Oh, she also seems to possess the capability to use magic as a separate option from attack. What does that mean?
That I don't know.
I don't think I've missed information about this game.
But, like, from our understanding, she does wield swords as well, but so does your avatar character, and then meanwhile, the heads of the other houses wield a lance.
The newer games have really been kind of
respectively.
leaning into characters having just a bunch of different weapons.
I almost wonder if that is specifically because of Smash Brothers.
I couldn't tell you.
I don't know. Like maybe that's just me being so Smash Brothers minded on everything.
Along with
but
the trend of trying to remove as many strategic decisions as possible from the game.
What?
If more of your characters can carry multiple weapons, you have to be less careful about who goes where, because they can be equipped for more situations.
So?
I think that's part of it.
So, I mean, it's hard to tell where Fire Emblem's going to go from here, especially with how many people just talk about how Fire Emblem has too many characters in Smash Brothers as it is already.
But the characters that we have are so much less interesting than the ones that we could have. So it's like, oh, we want the new characters, but God, there's so many already.
Yeah. Now, on the note of just pure number of characters, I honestly don't agree. For one, it's still not surpassing Mario and Pokemon. And for two, like, in the grand scheme, I mean, Fire Emblem's pretty big. It started in the NES, it's continued to have consistent releases, and recently, in these recent years, it has become such a big Nintendo series in people's minds. So I don't mind it having lots of characters.
I would be fine with it having all those characters if I felt like those characters were accurately representing the breadth of the series.
Which is why I don't mind if they add more to get that breadth.
It's so bizarre. It's such a bizarre situation.
It really is.
This is the only series where, like, characters have been added where I'm just like, why are they here? Like, all these other series, I don't feel have put in characters that we don't need as much. Even people complain about, like, Dark Pit and Palutena for, like, Kid Icarus, but I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
all the Pokemon make sense. All the Mario editions make sense.
Like, they're all showing you something new, except for Dark Pit, obviously, but that's, like, that's whatever. It's one character.
Yeah, that is the same situation as Lucina, so...
When you look at Fire Emblem, it's like, with 6 character slots, you could be representing so many different things about this series.
And
There's
half
so many
of them
bases
just use that Marth. Half of them just use that Marth moveset.
Yeah.
Half of them.
4 out of the 6 characters are just main Lords of Swords.
Yep.
And, like, the other 2 are still somewhat tangentially related to that.
Yeah.
But at least they also do something else.
They also do something else, but that's the thing, is it's like, I know some people who are upset about that even, and I don't fully disagree, where it's like, okay, Robin's our spellcaster, but he still also uses swords. Why couldn't we have a full spellcaster like Micaiah?
Yeah, I would still love to have somebody
Corrin is a dragon, but why couldn't we have a full dragon like Tiki?
I think it would be fascinating to have one of the, like, actual
true
one of the Lagoos
mannequins.
there, where it's like, where they're defenseless unless they transform, you know? Like, that would be fascinating. It would be such a fascinating gameplay mechanic. There's so much that can be done. That's the main thing. There's so much that can be done, and it feels like it just hasn't been getting done, and I just hope that it happens in some way.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see another one of what we already got.
And that's why you're so against the Chrom idea.
Basically. It's not even that I'd, like...
That's understandable.
It's not even that, like, I'm upset that they're there. It's more that I'm upset that, like, other things aren't. And so when it's like, oh, hey, here's Lucina, here's Roybeck, here's Chrom, I'm just kind of like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. Is there anything more to say?
No, I think we've said as much as we can about Fire Emblem. It's such a question mark, and it's such a... like, what even is the right path to go from here?
It's a question mark and then an ellipsis. It's a very...
After the question mark.
After the question mark. It's a lot of, like, what even... whatever. It's just so much of that. I don't know, man. I know it's making a lot of people happy. I just wish I was there. But it's the way it is. Alright, guys. Tune in for the next much cheerier episode.
Yeah, I can't get worse than this.
Yeah. Tune in for the next much happier episode where we talk about our depression.